Hi, welcome to Listen 2Riches. This audio segment delves into a subject relevant to everyone, economics. The author, Ha-Joon Chang, is a prominent figure in the field of development economics and a professor at the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. You can also find his seminal work, Kicking Away the Ladder, featured on this channel. Ha-Joon Chang's book, Economics for Everyone, is aimed at a general audience and serves as an accessible introduction to economics. While it is written in a straightforward manner, it should be noted that simplicity does not equate to shallowness. This book is far from a watered-down version of typical economics textbooks. On the contrary, it transcends the conventional theoretical frameworks found in standard textbooks, offering a higher-level perspective on what economics truly entails and how we can effectively utilize this tool. Upon finishing this book, one is left with a profound realization: true wisdom often comes in plain language. Right from the beginning, Ha-Joon Chang playfully pokes fun at economics. Is economics truly difficult? In reality, 95% of economics is common sense. The perception of economics as a complex subject arises from economists deliberately employing bewildering mathematical formulas and obscure jargon, intimidating the average person. Especially in recent decades, economists have strived to convince us that economics is as precise a science as physics or chemistry, implying that there is only one correct answer under given conditions. Consequently, ordinary folks need not trouble themselves with abstract concepts like currency, trade tariffs, or employment. After all, we wouldn't understand them anyway. Ha-Joon Chang, however, does not subscribe to this viewpoint. He wrote this book to demystify economics. Firstly, economics can never become a hard science like physics or chemistry. The reason is simple: the natural world's physical examples lack free will, but humans possess it. Therefore, questions pertaining to human behavior cannot have a single correct answer. Secondly, economics is not as daunting as it may seem. It is something we can grasp in our everyday lives, and everyone possesses the capacity to contemplate economic issues. Most importantly, in a field as vital to everyone's well-being as economics, we cannot simply leave it to economists to deliberate and make decisions. Ha-Joon Chang calls for every responsible citizen to acquire some knowledge of economics, which is the essence of the book's title, Economics for Everyone. It's worth noting that while this book serves as an introductory guide to economics, even those with years of experience studying the subject, like myself, can gain valuable insights from it. In the following sections, I will share the three aspects of this book that have had the most significant impact on me. Firstly, what economics truly studies. Secondly, why we need to understand different economic schools of thought. And thirdly, why economics is not value neutral. Let's begin by addressing the first question: what does economics really study? You might think it's simple, much like physics studies matter and law studies legal matters, so economics naturally studies the economy. However, in reality, it's not that straightforward. Take, for instance, the best-selling economics book of recent years, Freakonomics, by economist Stephen Levitt. A highly regarded figure who graduated from Harvard and became a professor of economics at the University of Chicago at a young age. However, Levitt expresses disinterest in traditional economic issues such as the stock market, real estate, savings, investment, inflation, unemployment, exchange rates, trade, and the like. Strangely, his best-selling book, Freakonomics, doesn't delve into these typical economic matters. So why was this book titled Freakonomics? You might assume it's just a catchy title to sell more copies, but that's not the case. Many mainstream economists share Levitt's viewpoint, believing that economics isn't a discipline that studies the economy. More accurately, they argue that economics is not the study of any specific subject, but rather a theoretical approach. This method can be applied to study any subject. As the subtitle of Freakonomics suggests, it explores the hidden side of everything. This understanding of economics began to gain traction in academia as early as the 1970s. Back then, Gary Becker, a leading figure in the Chicago School of Economics and a Nobel laureate, published an academic work titled The Economic Approach to Human Behavior. In this book, he asserted that economic methods can be applied to all human behavior. In other words, for various aspects of our lives, from finding jobs, starting businesses, getting married, having children, to everyday choices like ordering takeout, economic methods can help in making decisions. Becker even proposed a magical formula for marriage to calculate when people should marry and when they should divorce. Since then, the scope of economics has expanded far beyond traditional economic issues, attempting to explain various aspects of human life. This phenomenon has been jokingly referred to as economic imperialism. You might wonder what kind of theoretical approach economics employs that allows it to explain everything so magically. In reality, the answer can be summed up in two words: scarcity. Economists claim that economics is the study of scarcity. They like to say there's no such thing as a free lunch. This doesn't just refer to paying for meals at a restaurant. It means that considering the scarcity of resources, we have to give up other things when we make choices. The things we give up are referred to as opportunity costs by economists. Therefore, economics is the study of how to make choices among different opportunities. If we view the essence of human life as continually making choices, then economics can indeed explain everything. However, Ha-Joon Chang disagrees with this understanding of economics. He uses a quote from Charlie Munger to mock his fellow economists, likening them to people who see everything as a nail when they have a hammer. In Chang's view, economics fundamentally lacks the ability to explain everything with a single set of theoretical tools. The economist's task is not to save the world or delve into trivial matters of individual choices, but rather to earnestly clarify important economic issues. Yet, economists often meddle in too many affairs, neglecting to tend to their own fields. On the most crucial economic issues, such as economic stability, economists have busied themselves with matters beyond their purview. For instance, Nobel laureate economist Lucas declared in 2003 that the core problem of preventing economic depression had been solved, but a few years later, the financial crisis of 2007 erupted. In November 2008, at the height of the crisis, Queen Elizabeth II visited the London School of Economics and asked the economists present a perplexing question: why did none of you predict such a massive crisis? The Queen's question left the economists at the scene quite embarrassed. It is said that the Royal Society convened a special roundtable meeting, bringing together a group of top economists to discuss how to respond to the Queen. 6 months later, they finally sent a letter to Her Majesty explaining the situation. In essence, they admitted that they had evaluated the risk of individual financial products but had overlooked the systemic risks as a whole. The letter stated that they failed to predict the timing, scale, and severity of the crisis, which was a collective error by many wise individuals. Ha-Joon Chang believes that the fundamental problem lies in the mainstream economists' overly narrow theoretical toolkit. While it was mentioned earlier that economics is the study of scarcity, this represents just one school of thought within economics, specifically the neoclassical school. In fact, from the 1960s to the present day, the neoclassical school has remained the dominant paradigm in economics, often referred to as orthodox economics. Currently, the Western economics textbooks taught in major universities are primarily based on the theories of the neoclassical school. However, economics encompasses more than just the neoclassical perspective. In this book, Ha-Joon Chang introduces us to 9 major schools of economic thought, each with its own areas of focus, blind spots, strengths, and weaknesses. Faced with an economic issue, we can attempt to analyze it from the perspectives of these various schools to find the best explanation, rather than rigidly adhering to one method and hoping it can solve all problems. Ha-Joon Chang believes this is the right path for economic research. Next, we will examine these economic schools, exploring their shared legacies and differences, and seeing how they offer various perspectives for contemplating economic issues. If there is a neoclassical school, it's only natural there is also a classical school. Prominent figures in the classical school include Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Jean-Baptiste Say, and Thomas Malthus. Adam Smith believed that economics was the study of the nature and causes of national wealth, with production being the core of all economic activities. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith meticulously examined a pin factory, delving into how productivity could be increased from 20 pins per person per day to 4,800 pins per person per day through the division of labor. However, David Ricardo, born half a century later than Adam Smith, had a different perspective. Ricardo believed that the core of economics was not production but distribution. He was interested in how national income was distributed among the three classes of landlords, capitalists, and laborers, and what kind of distribution could increase overall societal welfare. Ricardo introduced the labor theory of value, asserting that the value of a commodity was determined by the amount of labor time required to produce it. However, half a century after Ricardo's passing, two heirs emerged from the classical school, the neoclassical school and the Marxist school. Perhaps surprisingly, these seemingly divergent economic schools share common roots and developed concurrently. Both of these schools inherited certain theories from the classical school. As mentioned earlier, the classical school emphasized both production and distribution, arguing that the economy is not composed of individuals but of classes, and introducing the labor theory of value. All these key points were completely absorbed and inherited by the Marxist school, and one could even say that, compared to the neoclassical school, the Marxist school remains more faithful to the tenets of the classical school. Building upon the classical foundation, the Marxist school further proposed that the goal of economics was to study the laws governing capitalism. Now, what is a capitalist economy? This term is widely recognized, but its meaning may not be fully understood. In brief, capitalism is an economic system where the purpose of production is to generate profits, not for personal consumption or fulfilling social obligations. The Marxist school argues that due to inherent flaws in private property rights, capitalism will eventually collapse. Later, the Marxist school also produced an important successor, the post-Keynesian school. In his seminal work, Capitalism, Socialism, and Democracy, Joseph Schumpeter devoted the first 4 chapters to Marxist theory. Some scholars jokingly say that Schumpeter merely changed a few adjectives in Marx's writings. Like Marx, Schumpeter emphasized that technological development was the driving force of capitalism. Schumpeter proposed that entrepreneurs, through innovation, gain temporary monopolistic positions and enjoy supernormal profits, which are the driving forces behind economic development. Additionally, Schumpeter, like Marx, believed that capitalism would decline over time. His reasoning was that as firms continually grew in size, innovative entrepreneurs would be replaced by bureaucratic managers, leading to a loss of vitality in capitalism. Now, let's revisit another successor of the classical school, the neoclassical school. The neoclassical economists consider themselves the legitimate heirs of the classical school because they inherited 2 critical ideas from it, the invisible hand and the theory of market equilibrium. Guided by the invisible hand, the neoclassical school believes that everyone will rationally pursue their self-interest, thereby increasing the overall welfare of society. Furthermore, in the long run, markets can automatically achieve equilibrium without the need for government intervention. Based on these principles, most neoclassical economists advocate for laissez-faire economic policies, arguing that smaller government is better. However, in addition to the neoclassical school, there is a more radical school that promotes laissez-faire and minimal government intervention, the Austrian school, represented by the renowned Friedrich Hayek. It's important to note that, although these 2 schools share some similarities in their academic principles, their reasoning is fundamentally different. The neoclassical school believes that individuals possess enough rationality to make optimal choices, thus rendering government intervention unnecessary. On the contrary, the Austrian school argues that human rationality is unreliable and no one can make sufficiently rational judgments about optimal choices, hence the need to avoid economic intervention. What's even more intriguing is the recent prominence of the behavioral economics school. This school, through a multitude of experiments, has demonstrated the Austrian school's view of human rationality, that the human cognitive system has obvious flaws and often fails to make optimal choices. However, in contrast to the Austrian school, the policy recommendations proposed by behavioral economics are the opposite. It is precisely because people are not entirely rational that the government should intervene in various ways to guide and encourage them to make better choices. You can see that the neoclassical and Austrian schools have diametrically opposite views on human rationality but propose similar policy recommendations. On the other hand, the Austrian and behavioral economics schools share a common perspective on human rationality but offer completely opposing policy recommendations. This seemingly contradictory phenomenon is indeed fascinating. Furthermore, while the neoclassical school inherited two crucial ideas from the classical school, the invisible hand and the theory of market equilibrium, people often overlook some significant differences between the neoclassical and classical schools. Firstly, the classical school believed that society consisted of classes like landlords, capitalists, and workers with both economic and moral attributes. However, the neoclassical school claims that there are no classes and society is composed of atomized individuals who are devoid of morality. In their view, each person is absolutely rational and entirely self-interested, akin to robots continually calculating how to maximize personal gains. This fundamentally alters the classical school's core assumptions about society. The classical school adhered to the labor theory of value, positing that the value of a commodity was determined by the labor time required for its production. Conversely, the neoclassical school held a different view, suggesting that a commodity's value was determined by the satisfaction it provided to consumers, known as utility. Utility refers to the satisfaction consumers derive from a commodity, rooted in their subjective preferences and evaluations. Moreover, while the classical school emphasized that economics should primarily focus on production and distribution, the neoclassical school had a different perspective. They were not concerned with how products were produced, believing that as long as factors like capital and labor were combined, various goods and services would be automatically generated. They viewed the production process as a kind of black box, arguing that economists need not delve into the details such as the organization structure of factories, management mechanisms, technological research, and system improvements, tasks which they believed should be handled by management experts and engineers. Similarly, the neoclassical school did not concern itself with how wealth and power were distributed. They viewed wealth and power distribution as established facts to be unquestioned. Instead, they focused on the realm of exchange and consumption. In the neoclassical view, the entire economy resembles a network of exchanges composed of independent, rational, and self-interested individuals who pursue the maximization of personal interests through free exchange. However, in modern society, this imagination of the economic system is no longer accurate. Nobel laureate Herbert Simon once estimated that only 20% of economic activities within the United States are organized by unseen market mechanisms, while the remaining 80% of economic activities occur within enterprises and government institutions using visible methods such as planning, organization, coordination, and control. Therefore, in modern society, enterprises have become the most important decision-makers in economic activities rather than individuals. 10% of the world's total output is produced by the largest 200 companies, and in international trade of manufactured goods, intra-firm trade by multinational corporations accounts for as much as 30% to 50%. This viewpoint is also supported by the new institutional economic school, which believes that large corporations essentially internalize many market transactions, replacing the invisible hand of the market with the visible hand of management, significantly reducing transaction costs and improving resource allocation efficiency. When making management decisions, enterprises must consider the complex game among various stakeholders, such as shareholders, managers, and labor unions. This is fundamentally different from the simple decision of maximizing personal interests. Therefore, the neoclassical view of the entire economy as a collection of individuals exchanging goods and services through market mechanisms is no longer applicable to modern society. In 1991, when Coase received the Nobel Prize, he criticized neoclassical theory in his acceptance speech, stating that it only applied to the lonely individual exchanging walnuts for strawberries at the edge of a forest. However, in modern society, the most significant economic decision-makers are not only corporations but also governments, and one cannot exist without the other. In many countries, governments are among the largest employers, with approximately 15% to 25% of the population working in the public sector. Furthermore, in developed countries, the proportion of civil servants is much higher than in developing countries. In the United States, despite being considered a small government among developed countries, there are still over 20 million civil servants, accounting for 6% of the total population. In contrast, China currently has 7 million civil servants and over 30 million staff in public institutions, totaling about 40 million, but representing only 3% of China's total population. On average, government expenditures in developed countries account for 45% of GDP. In the field of economics, there are three important economic schools of thought: Keynesianism, institutionalism, and the developmental tradition, all of which emphasize the role of government. Keynesianism argues that the government can use macroeconomic tools such as fiscal and monetary policy to regulate the economy. Institutionalism, on the other hand, emphasizes adjusting economic structures through institutional design, such as financial regulation, social security, and public administration. It's worth noting that the developmental tradition focuses on how underdeveloped economies can catch up with developed ones, and governments play a crucial role in this process. This tradition includes early heavy industry protectionism, infant industry protectionism, and modern development economics. In the field of economics, there are many schools of thought, including classical, neoclassical, Marxist, Austrian, Keynesian, behavioral, institutional, and new institutional economics. Disputes among different schools often involve differences in ethical and political viewpoints. The debate between the classical and neoclassical schools also reflects the different ethical and political values behind economic theories. Scholars of the classical school were seen as social philosophers who believed that economics contained value judgments and political advocacy. Later, the neoclassical school attempted to view economics as a purer science, but the ethical and political values behind economic theory cannot be entirely eliminated. Lastly, it's important to understand that statistical data in economics does not equate to objective facts. The interpretation of numbers is closely related to the underlying theory, and therefore, careful thought and analysis are needed to understand the ethical and political intentions behind them. For example, GDP, which appears to be an objective and neutral statistic, is actually an economically significant indicator closely tied to politics. It played a crucial role in the United States during World War II and the Cold War. Therefore, we should approach economic data with caution and not take it at face value. The content of this book concludes here, and let's briefly recap. Ha-Joon Chang believes that mainstream economists claim they can explain everything in the world with a single economic theory, which is a complete delusion. The correct approach is to return to the true field of economics, integrating the theoretical methods of various schools of thought and using different dimensions to understand and solve problems. Economics can never become a pure science, nor can it achieve value neutrality. Behind each economic school of thought lie different value orientations and political positions. Ha-Joon Chang states that, fundamentally, economics is a political debate that concerns how interests are distributed and who benefits and who loses. Economics is too important for us to leave the thinking to others. Even if you are not an economist, as long as you have some knowledge of important economic theories and understand the political and moral assumptions behind them, you can make wise judgments about economic affairs. The above is the essence of this book. Well, the content of this audio episode is complete. Congratulations on completing another book. Thank you all for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom with practice to achieve our financial goals and create a better future. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.